Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And the headlines that are going around today are going to be humble pie for some people, but not really. All these people that have done just the most unbelievable amount of mental gymnastics throughout this whole COVID-19 84 scenario will simply go, well, now that Fauci is saying it may have come from a lab and he's not convinced otherwise, this will be the fall of Fraudchi and his Faucian ways. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all, in fact. And instead, what I think is happening now is that limited hangout narratives are beginning to flourish, and institutions are being set up for those limited hangout narratives, such as this COVID Lessons Commission. And now that you have Fauci saying that we have to investigate what went on in China, what happens? The narrative almost completely shifts to China, right? And the CCP. And now you have these nation states pitted against one another. The narrative also conveniently shifts, okay, to China versus the United States. In that narrative that's continually being pushed by people like Mike Pompeo. This should worry everybody, because what I'm not seeing is accountability for Fauci's actions. The real question is, why is the man not in prison? Rand Paul, although he didn't go hard enough in my opinion, finally solidified a lot of what we knew about excuse me, about Fauci and his connections to things like gain of function and the Wuhan lab in particular, which again, anybody out there that was watching anything outside of the mainstream media and actually questioning it instead of just falling for debunked and banned and banned and debunked and debunked and banned, knew all of these things about gain of function, about Fauci using loopholes, about Dr. Barrick. All those things were out there, okay? And let me tell you, I've seen a sneak peek of COVID Land by Paul Wittenberger. It looks phenomenal. Shout out to Paul. You're doing an amazing job. I can't wait for that multiple part series to drop because it's going to be so important. Now, before we get into this story, I also want to mention that Rand Paul is not going to be boop boop because he's already had it. It's common sense. It's common sense, folks. I don't know anybody out there that could look at you with a straight face, okay, and tell you that natural immunity would not be the best immunity for anything. Something you develop natural antibodies for. My goodness, what is going on? So the big thing here about the Fauci story, and we're going to believe there's a small clip here at the bottom. We're going to play that clip. But is that we're also going to intertwine this with 9/11 because it's so important. A lot of people are tuning in for a Fauci video. Well, I got news for you. We're going to, because these narratives are going to be pushed and the cover-up crew is coming and the whitewash is on the way, we're going to show you this 9/11 commission. We're going to show you not only Zelikow, but we're going to show you Joe Biden, okay, covering up the money in 9/11. Now, this is when, Joe Biden was Joey B, true gangster, mother trucker. Let me say that. True gangster, mother trucker. Both the clips we're going to play of Biden are before he's even vice president, okay? Now it's Zombie Joe. But if you think those that controlled Joe Biden then don't control Zombie Joe now, well, again, you haven't been paying attention. So, first off, let's get into this. Okay, let's get into the Fauci thing. Let's see it. Dr. Fauci now says he's not convinced COVID developed naturally and calls for a full investigation into what went on in China. I'm sure that's what he really wants, by the way. All right, I'm sure that's what he really wants. Let's see if
fact checking on the coronavirus for the past year. And like you said, there's a lot of cloudiness around the origins of COVID-19 still. So I wanted to ask, are you still confident that it developed naturally?
No, actually, that's the point that I said. And I think the real unfortunate aspect of what Senator Paul did is he was conflating research in a collaborative way with Chinese scientists, which was, you'd almost have to say if we did not do that, we would almost be irresponsible, because SARS-CoV-1 clearly originated in China, and we were fortunate to escape a major pandemic. So we really had to learn a lot more about the viruses that were there, about whether or not people were getting infected with bad viruses. So in a very minor collaboration, as part of a subcontract of a grant, we had a collaboration with some Chinese scientists. And what he conflated that is that therefore we were involved in creating the virus, which is the most ridiculous, majestic leap I've ever heard of.
let's just stop it here. Ridiculous, majestic leap. Now, number one, he never said that. He wasn't conflating anything. And notice he's marginalizing everything. He's minimalizing everything, a minimal capacity. No, they're called loopholes. Okay, don't act like. And the one thing I will give him is, again, this is not a nation state thing. This stuff is going on all over the place. Just like I don't believe this to be a nation state operation. All right, let me say this again. In the very beginning of all of this, when things were going on, I said, you know what? I'll be convinced this is natural and not a bioweapon. Forget about a leak, because everybody's now shifted to this leak. Why a leak? No one's even going to whisper it could have been seeded? Nobody? Is that not allowed to question that? I mean, what questions am I allowed to ask, right? So if you have it and it's a leak and it's just this one place, you'll burn people for maybe a cover up, right? But like I said, I didn't see any billionaires dying from this thing. So you're telling me, and again, they always controlled the narrative. We can't talk about alternative treatments and therapeutics here because of, all the restrictions on YouTube, but we have in the past, and you can definitely go see those kind of videos over on Rockfin. And I'm encouraging people to make that free Rockfin account right now. Let's finish up with Fauci trying to whitewash now that he's got his talking points and he's not being put on the spot by Paul.
But no, I'm not convinced about that. I think that we should continue to investigate what went on in China until we find out, to the best of our ability, exactly what happened. Certainly, the people who've investigated say it likely was the emergence from an animal reservoir that then infected individuals, but it could have been something else, and we need to find that out. So
again, notice how he wants to fully investigate China now, but he just said that he was in like a partnership and it was going on in different places. So that's all shifting the narrative. That's what you're seeing there, guys. Okay? Thumbs the video up, subscribe, share. Again, shout out to Rand Paul, who, again, seems like one of the only common sense people out there right now. And we're going to get to this chapter of Fabled Enemies because I think it's important to show you guys that when Joey B was Joey B, okay, he was part of the cover-up crew on 9/11. All right, and the cover-up crew on 9/11, no matter what you believe, there's about 35 minutes before this, okay, of the film Fabled Enemies. Anybody can watch this for free. It's in the documentaries playlist section. It's also on Rockfin, I believe, in even higher quality. In fact, the highest quality over at Rockfin. Again, make that free account and check it out. Here we go.
Confirmation of these allegations against Israel would finally come in January of 2008, when the Times Online would tell FBI whistleblower Sibel Edmonds' story. This Turkish translator for the FBI found an international spy ring that included Israel, Turkey, and Pakistan working with household names within the United States. She was gagged and to this day has been unable to tell her entire account. Edmonds stated that one high-level official was aiding foreign operatives against U.S. interests by passing them highly classified information, not only from the State Department, but also from the Pentagon, in exchange for money, position, and political objectives. The article stated that the Turks and Israelis had planted moles in military and academic institutions which handled nuclear technology. The Pakistani operation was led by General Mahmoud Ahmed, then the ISI chief. Intelligence analysts say that the members of the ISI were close to al-Qaeda before and after 9/11. Ahmed was accused of sanctioning a $100,000 wire.
Sorry about that. You couldn't hear anything I just said. I hit the mute button. I got to stop that. Oh, see, I got it. I got it, guys. See, that's my jackassery. I got a new mixer today. So hopefully the sound's a lot better, right? There's no buzzing or anything like that. Got a new mixer. Fixed it. What I was saying is that for context on General Mahmoud Ahmed, Biden is meeting with him, but all these other people are meeting with him as well, okay? Before, on the day of, and after 9/11. In a separate clip, Biden actually talks about how he's the most powerful man in Pakistan, running the ISI, basically their CIA, okay?
Payment to Muhammad Atta, one of the 9/11 hijackers, immediately before the attacks. Oddly enough, General Ahmed would be in Washington, D.C., meeting with George Tenet, the current director of the CIA, and others in the weeks before the attacks. In fact, on the morning of 9/11 itself, he would be having breakfast with Senator Bob Graham and Porter Goss. These two men would co-chair the initial congressional investigation, and Goss would later become the head of the CIA.
I was trying to make the point that Ahmed didn't hide the fact, when we met with him in Pakistan and when he was in Washington, that he was close to the Taliban, that was his job, to be close to the Taliban.
Graham would go on PBS and have this to say.
I was surprised at the evidence that there were foreign governments involved in facilitating the activities of at least some of the terrorists in the United States. I am stunned that we have not done a better job of pursuing that to determine if other terrorists received similar support, and even more important, if the infrastructure of a foreign government assisting terrorists still exists. Most of that information is classified, I think overly classified. I believe the American people should know the extent of the challenge that we face in terms of foreign government involvement.
In that report, 27 pages would be completely redacted.
Now, those pages came out in some parts with the Saudi Arabian government. But you got to remember, again, he said foreign governments. Now, if you watch this, other than the Pakistani government, other than the Saudi Arabian government, there's a large section on the Israeli government and their involvement. I do want to read a couple of these Tipskis and Hutch. We're getting over at what? Over at the Rockfin, where we're not fully demonetized and censored. Kevin Pass says, try Fauci for crimes against humanity twice. First for AIDS, AZT, and then for his COVIDiotic horse poop. Funny how both involved the late Dr. Kary Mullis PCR test, which was not made to diagnose anything. The PCR scam is the linchpin to all of this, in my uninformed conspiratorial opinion. Google whooping cough scare, Dartmouth 2007. PCR was the culprit there too. That's interesting. Aaron says, keep up the good work, Jason. Kevin says, you're muted again. We got that. I appreciate that. And then Kenneth White says, love your work on this because Epstein is under a new identity in a new country. I do not believe that, but hey, I understand why some people do. Let's continue with this, okay? And again, we're about to get to, back in the day, Joey B, gangster style, the man.
And do you think that will ever become public? Which countries are talking about?
It'll become public at some point when it's turned over to the archives, but that's 20 or 30 years from now. We need to have this information now.
Are you suggesting that you are convinced that there was a state sponsor behind 9/11?
I think there is very compelling evidence that at least some of the terrorists were assisted, not just in financing, although that was part of it, by a sovereign foreign government.
The day after the attacks, it was apparent that some people within the government were aware of the Pakistani funding of al-Qaeda.
Secretary Powell, one country you didn't mention was Pakistan, and I understand that your deputy has spoken with the ambassador to Pakistan.
Deputy Secretary Armitage did meet with Pakistani officials today. It would be useful to point out to the Pakistani leadership at every level how helpful they might be if we find a basis to act upon that information.
Senator Joe Biden, who had also met with the head of the Pakistani ISI, would have harsh words on the Senate floor.
And the word should go out to those who pretend that they wish to be our friends, that they're going to have to make some very difficult choices. Pakistan in particular is going to have to make a very difficult choice very soon. Words will not be sufficient. Actions will be demanded.
When Biden was confronted, he confirmed his meeting with Ahmed, saying Pakistani intelligence was indeed funding the Taliban.
Sir, one question. In the days following 9/11, you met with the head of Pakistani ISI, General Muhammad Ahmed. It has since come to light that he ordered Saeed Sheikh to wire $100,000 to Muhammad Atta. Why was he allowed to go back to Pakistan, and why wasn't he questioned, and why were you meeting with him?
I met with him to deliver a message that if he didn't stop supporting the Taliban, we would take him out.
Why did we let him go? We let him fly freely. We never investigated him. We never even looked into him.
Look, there's a thing called diplomatic passports. We did not arrest Khrushchev when he came.
But he financed the hijackers, and you let him go, and he's free. He hijacked the hijackers.
No one knew he financed the
hijackers. It's wired. It's reported.
No one. Yeah, he knew.
He would later state that the information was indeed classified.
How did you know the ISI was helping the Taliban, sir? How did you know they were helping them? It is classified?
Pakistan was set up as the silent funding arm of the hijackers.
Let's just stop it right there. Because Omar Saeed Sheikh, the middleman there, was recently released from jail after being convicted of beheading Daniel Pearl, that first beheading in this war on terror that seems to never end. You see how this is all connected? And remember, you got Joey B covering up in that respect, but at the end of the day, what they'll do is they'll set up a commission, okay, with Zelikow to do these same things and push similar narratives that bring us all into further enslavement. It's really bad right now. It's really, really bad right now. We're about to have the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and they're going for broke. You better believe they're going for broke. That's what this is. That's what COVID-19 84 is. And that's why, again, they may not even find that it leaked from a lab. But now that narrative's allowed to be presented, and Fauci has to act like, oh, he's all for an open investigation into a certain place, as long as they control it. As long as they control it. That's the reality. Okay? So let's continue. I think this is important. If you haven't seen all of Fabled Enemies, I would encourage you to check it out. But we're going to continue a little bit because I want you to understand. You have guys like Max Cleland leave the commission. Leave the commission. And maybe you'll see that, but probably not. There's so many bootlickers out there and narrative controllers and censors that you may not see that anymore. All right?
They were used as a launching base for the occupation of Afghanistan. To review, we have just learned that many of the hijackers had ties to U.S. military installations, the FBI, and the CIA, that both Israel and Pakistan have classified roles in 9/11 to this day, And the man who co-chaired the initial investigation into 9/11 stated this information would be classified for at least 20 to 30 years. Virtually none of this information was in the 9/11 Commission report. Instead, you are expected to believe that Osama bin Laden carried out the attacks alone. Yet 2 wars and 7 years later, he's still on the loose. The bipartisan
Don't worry, they
commission
got
was
him.
full of insiders who whitewashed the events of that day to the point it was comical.
5 years after the horrors of 9/11, there's a new way to look at those unforgettable images. Through color, caricature, and captions, comic book veterans Ernie Colon and Sid Jacobson have brought to life the 9/11 Commission report. It took a year and a half to distill 600 pages down to less than 150.
When you hear about the idea of the 9/11 Commission report as essentially a comic book, your first reaction is, what are you, crazy?
What are you, crazy? It's accurate. The comic book is accurate. You should have known we were, they call it Clown World, or we live in a cartoon. It's been here a while, folks. And now they've gotten to the point where the inversion of reality seems so easy to manipulate.
Accurate. I mean, the graphic version is accurate. That's what happened.
Thomas Keane was the co-chair of the commission with Lee Hamilton. They would write a book together called Without Precedent. In it, he would claim that NORAD and the Pentagon did not tell the truth, and that indictments were considered.
Oh, no kidding.
If the report itself wasn't accurate, how could the comic book be? Thomas Keane is now traveling the country in order to instruct teachers on how to teach 9/11 to their young, impressionable minds.
They taught a generation how to perceive that event, and you wonder why millennials are soft or don't have critical thinking skills in many cases, or get behind the wrong causes in many cases. Okay? You look at what's being censored on the internet now and what authoritative narratives are now. They were prepping your kids with large-scale events like 9/11 that obviously are still historically relevant today because our entire foreign and domestic policy was just totally revamped and our Constitution eviscerated on a level never before after that. Remember that.
The 9/11 Commission was such a cover-up that Max Cleland, an appointed member, went off on Wolf Blitzer.
A deal announced yesterday between the White House and the commission investigating the September 11th attacks is proving to be rather controversial. Under the agreement, only certain members of the commission will be allowed to review classified documents from the White House, and their notes will be subject to administration review. Today, some relatives of people who were killed in the attacks criticized the agreement, and our next guest, who's a member of the commission, claimed the deal is disgusting. Former Georgia Senator Max Cleland, a Democrat, joins me here.
Well, you've used the word deal 3 times. I don't think the 9/11 Commission ought to be making deals with our own government under the responsibility we have from the Congress and our responsibility to the American people to get all the facts about all the commissioners. Look at those facts. Now, we've had to subpoena the FAA for those documents. We've had to subpoena NORAD for those documents. I'm in favor of subpoenaing the White House for the documents we need so that all the commissioners can get to see all the documents that we need. That's the only way we can face the American people and the families and say we have done a thorough investigation independently of the White House and the entire executive branch. The president has said only a minority of the commission can see a minority of the documents, and then they have to clear what they're going to say to the rest of the commission with the White House.
If you're one of those 4 that gets to see these documents, would that change your opinion?
No. They don't want any more eyeballs to see their documents than they can possibly get away with. It's a scam. It's absolutely disgusting.
Cleland would later resign.
Boom! Look, it's a total cover-up. This is my man McGovern right here laying it down, and then we're going to wrap this video up. Thumbs the video up, subscribe, and share. Again, we're playing this because the narratives are changing. Fauci should have already been in prison, and setting up Zelikow as the leader of this commission, guys? Come on. Give me a break. It's a bad, sick joke. Like the graphic novel is a bad, sick joke.
Well, they have something to cover up, and the 9/11 Commission, of course, was a master cover-up. We know that. The question is what it was covering up.
I don't believe the reports on September 11th put out by the 9/11 Commission or by Congress. I've seen one put out by the 9/11 Commission, and it was basically hundreds of pages of nothing. It was very generic. It was very indirect, indistinct, devoid of facts, devoid of hard positions. It was things like mistakes were made. We need to improve human intelligence. This is nothing. I mean, it's like, yes, I stand for truth, justice, and the American way. But it was vapid. It was a waste of time and money, but gives the impression that, oh, yes, the government is doing something. The government is studying the issue.
Well, what makes me really disappointed, and that's an understatement, is that Congress's role is oversight. And Congress, even today, you'll see members of Congress saying, well, we haven't implemented everything that the 9/11 Commission recommended. And the 9/11 commissioners have said that the administration obstructed them, lied to them.
The staff statements were described by various commissioners to be an indictment of the FBI in particular, but also an indictment of the CIA.
I don't think the chairman and I have ever characterized the staff statements as an indictment. It's possible others have done that. We have not. And Tom and I have heard repeated praises from people in your business, in the media business, thanking us for the quality of those statements.
I would second that, and by the way, I never, ever would correct the vice chairman, but I'm afraid I did characterize one of those statements as an indictment.
I mean, let's just stop. It's a big fucking joke to these people. It's a big fucking joke to these people. The media business have just praised us for our graphic novel-like bullshit. I mean, did you see, are they talking about Cleveland? And to this day, another reason all this matters is, you know, as much as you guys want to talk about your MAGA crowd or your alternative media, who out there, where was Tucker Carlson or Ben Shapiro or any of these people that are anti-Biden or Glenn Beck showing you that footage of Biden covering up the money man on 9/11? Where was it? It wasn't in the mainstream anywhere. And where does it lead? A bunch of unelected bureaucrat insiders from their corrupt positions within government before. Lee Hamilton was on the friggin' Warren Commission for JFK, for God's sakes. Like, give me and they're laughing in your face. That's what you're going to get. And you're going to get something that these parrots, just like they were wet market bad, natural. Whatever they say or put out, those are the narratives that are going to be run with across the board. Get beyond that. We're almost at the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So now's the time to wake up, folks. Thumbs it up, subscribe, share, join the Burmese Brigade. As you know, it's tough to keep subscriptions over here. Ring that bell, check all the time. All the documentaries are free and in the playlist section. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, which you just watched a piece of, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade, the motion picture. I want to thank Odyssey for backing up all my content, my YouTube page, which, who knows, may not be here. We just got rid of our second strike. We got no strikes on the channel now. None. It's almost like a miracle. But, you know, who knows. We're still not at 17,000 followers. That's one of the ways you can support me, is at least make that free account. If you are a premium member, you do get some of the other great stuff we put out there, and you get everybody's premium content as well. Throwbacks and everything. But we do have a 20-plus minute exclusive throwback for free, where this whole playbook for COVID-19 84 was laid out over a decade ago in documentation published by WikiLeaks. Let me repeat that. The whole deal for the swine flu or the bird flu or the H1N1, whatever they were calling it at that point, because we go over all those narratives they were pushing then. Okay, these documents were published by WikiLeaks via the CDC that lay out almost the entire playbook. That video is exclusive to Rockfin, so go make the free account and go check that out at the very least. I want to say thank you to all you guys that have supported me. The links are down below on YouTube if you want to financially do